Hello and welcome to another episode of Digital Dexterity. I'm Wes McChristian, the VP of our Kentico practice here at Americaneagle.com. Today has been a fun-filled adventure. We have Kentico here on site with us in Chicago.
So why not have a chat?
So I'm joined by
Chris Hajjar. My name is Chris Hajjar. I actually was a Kentico implementer for better part of 10 years. I joined Kentico about 5 years ago around their new product. And I've been around CMS in this industry for a very long time.
And for those that have been keeping score, this is not Chris's first time on the show. So thanks for coming back around.
Sure thing.
I don't mind sharing. You know, the reason for your visit today is really heavy emphasis on enablement for the team, right? So you guys came out. We did some great sessions with the team here, just about all of the new features, functions, roadmap, excitement, everything that Kentico is releasing into the Experience by Kentico tooling. So we wanted to share that with our audience here today. So I think, Chris, just to kind of pair with some of our conversation from today, one of the biggest, most important topics is this idea of content modeling. You guys have put out some great training. You guys have unlocked certification capability, but I'd love to start at square one. What is content modeling?
Sure. It is one of those terms that if you've been around CMS for the better part of however many years lately, it's I hate to use the word to describe it, but it is the model of your content. And what I mean by that is the structure. So, you might have an article, you might have other things, very simple to very complex, but it's kind of, the framework of what you're looking to accomplish with your data on here. This isn't really talking about look and feel or anything like that. It's strictly around, how your data is structured for, scalability, reusability, all that kind of stuff. It's, kind of the way we see, the market in general going is, not having to repeat content, coming up with, these really good content models that can house what you're looking to do now and even into the future.
So the way I think of it often is it's the anatomy and the relationships that content have with one another. So, you touched on it. I think a fairly ubiquitous example is articles, news.
Pretty much everybody would have that.
Some type, right? So a very basic content model for something like news or articles, it's this idea that they're all going to be different and unique. And you might have 1,000 articles, but all of them are going to have a headline and a byline and a publish date and an image and a description and maybe relationships to other articles. So when we think about content modeling at scale, it's this idea that we're going to define those things across types and create relationships between them, which may sound obvious.
It does.
But talk to us a little bit about like the benefit. Why should you think this way? What's the value of thinking this way?
That's the surface level. The surface level is yes, my article has these 5 fields, whatever it might be. Where this goes and where kind of the art and the advanced and where this can really go is that those content models can even have fields that are hidden to your consumers that are doing things under the hood, that are doing things around logic or taxonomies. That's where a lot of the benefits come in is that, when you request or query for some data, you know exactly what you're going to get back, as well as any other related things that you might find useful. For some of the devs in the crowd that have been like me, where, you might have had older versions of things and you tried to get a piece of content and then another related piece of content, you could be making multiple requests, you could be nesting them, and it turns into a very kind of difficult procedure. A proper content model that flows out and has, relations to those other pieces, then can, distill that down into one query. And this really helps. We're seeing, especially, market-wide for scalability, for syndication, reusability. A lot of times humans are kind of one of the weaker links in terms of content management in that we might forget something or do something. So again, a strong content model could prevent you from making mistakes in the future as well.
I like I think content reuse is the use case we're seeing more often or most often now. And I think it's there's a couple different like practical implementations. So content reuse might mean I'm using this piece of content in multiple places across the site that may have individual experiences. So the idea of articles, it might be a listing experience, a details experience, and a card experience. But because the anatomy of the model is all the same, we have a lot of control over those experiences. It also produces a single point of management for that piece of content. But then there's also reuse at scale, where I'm thinking about experiences with that, in this case, article, outside of the web, outside of the .com or
because
the .org.
Who knows what's going to happen soon too.
That's right.
How we consume content. Yeah,
that's right. So the best practices that go into content modeling help unlock those opportunities for multi-channel consumption of content.
Right. So that same article could end up on a phone, and you change it in one centralized place. We're letting whatever is consuming that content build the view around it, essentially. So if you're looking at it on the website, it might look like one way, but the content inside of it is the same. And that's, kind of Kentico itself has moved into a hub and spoke solution. And that was one of the big reasons was scalability and, syndication, reuse, and take the human element out of it. Make it so you don't have to change something in 5 different places and, possibly set yourself up to make an error in that regard.
I'm glad you're using some of the language, and I'm not going to pick on you, but you're using developer-centric language. Things like querying, right?
Yes.
So like, let's unpack that a little bit more, because I don't think this topic is just for developers.
No, not at all.
Right? So I think it naturally enables developers and engineers to build things and drive business value through the activities that they're doing. But I think with some of the advancements you guys have made in the product specifically, it's allowed for probably still semi-technical users, business analysts, for example, right, to do a lot of the modeling on their own to then maybe hand off to a developer, right?
And there is a bit of an art to it. I talk about people that, when I'm talking to them about modeling is, it's science, but there's a little bit of an art. There's not there's plenty of content modeling books, but if you look at something and two professionals might model something slightly different if they're looking to accomplish something different down the road. But exactly what you said, the idea around this highly structured and rigid-ish almost thing is to even empower non-technical users to be more influential on what they can do. And in our particular product, you can actually even model and use our headless channel without a developer if you wanted to. So if you do have some slightly more technical people and I think that's kind of where it's heading, developers aren't going to go away by any stretch of the imagination, but I think there are ways to free them up to do other things, writing code rather than, having to enable a marketer to, be able to model or update their content models, stuff like that. Because I think that's another part too, is it needs to evolve. Like you write a content model, it doesn't mean that it's going to be the same thing in a year because, business requirements might have changed or who's consuming this might have changed, things like that.
Yeah. And I like the art science call out. Like for anybody who's been
kind of like coding, right?
And I think too, like, it's a skill too, right? Like for anybody who's been part of the Kentico community has probably heard Mike Wills, for instance, talk about content modeling. Like I'm always just so impressed for like the way he talks about it is like, it makes it.
He builds it in his head too, which blows me. I mean, he literally can like do the entire thing in his head. So,
but it's
very impressive.
But I think I think he does a great job of talking about it in terms that are sort of scientific. But you can tell in the way that he presents the material, like it is an art.
There is.
This is something that is practiced.
You got to follow the rules.
Yes.
But but you're not totally in a box.
Yeah.
You have the freedom. And that's what I think Kentico has always kind of approached that we make the framework, but we don't instruct you how to use it necessarily. We tell you the rules of the bounds of what it can do, but actually, because again, we're not a vertical solution. We're not for any particular
Yeah.
industry or anything like that. We want the content model to be as fluid. And like you said, it does evolve over time. And I think one of the other parts too, and I think we even had a project about this, even coming from an older version of our software where we had dozens of models.
Yeah.
We've been able to consolidate them down into, much less, sometimes 20% of the ones we had before, because of the new flexibility around being able to relate items to each other, stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which again makes everybody's life a little bit easier. Less stuff to manage, less overhead.
Well, I tell us more about that, right? Because I think we started in our definition very simple, right?
Mhm.
Article. Everybody's got an
Mhm.
article, right? But this notion of consolidation, I think, is probably something folks would be really interested to hear more about. Because I think everybody's interested in reducing
Yeah, I mean,
complexity in their life. So give us
We
a
can
little
use
bit more
product, sure. Like
give us a little more
a
context.
widget, a product, whatever it might be, something that has a little bit more to it. So if you think, not only would it have the typical title, it could have as many fields associated with it as possible. If you had multiple types of products,
Yeah.
older versions, especially of our content management system, would make you build multiple content models for those because they had to be much more specific. They had to fit into, an inline, or they had to be encapsulated by something. Now we could have a base product model with then other models that we add on top of that. What that is going to allow you to do is, I talked about evolution and the length of these things. Now you don't have to fix 5 of them. You might only have to fix 1. Maybe you have a new feature on one of your, products. Now we're not going to have to fix all the product models. We're going to fix the feature content model that the product is using. So it really does kind of boil down to scalability at its root, in that, the consolidation, it's kind of the opposite of the scalability of being able to get rid of all those very specific purpose built models and turn them into, I don't want to say more general, because it's a little bit too far that way,
Yeah.
but they're more accepting, or they're more
Sure.
malleable, I guess the best way to put it.
Yeah, there's also the management experience
Right.
that must be considered as well.
And any of the devs and PMs in the audience, inheriting a project.
Yes.
Is one of,
There you
so
go.
I did a lot of that in my career. And one of the hardest parts is if you have nothing, reverse engineering is, you got to figure out everything, content model, how they're being used. And if there's 75 of them, now I'm finding these things all over the code base. If instead I have a root, content model, and then other ones built on top of that, now it's a lot easier to kind of almost reverse engineer or open up that box and figure out A, what it's doing, and B, fix it or improve upon it if I needed to.
So model responsibly, folks.
Model response. I do the Spider-Man great power comes great responsibility thing all the time.
Because if I inherit a content model and it's an article and it's title, image, description, I have a pretty good sense of
Right.
like that context. But if it's
a hyper-specific business case
Right.
that has a bunch of hidden fields that are doing stuff, and then you have 5 of them that are all just slightly different.
right image,
Exactly.
do,
Yeah, exactly.
left aligned header, that sort of stuff is like, not only should you not be modeling for specifically
Mhm.
experience, but it also makes it then harder for somebody to pick it up and
reuse it. And
That's
then you can only use it in that one spot. So yeah, it's kind of at the core of a lot of things. It's at the core of, it's the source of truth for how your model, or excuse me, how your content is created. But it can do a lot more once you get past the surface level stuff around taxonomies, categorization, logic. They're, the models that make it to a production website. Sure, there's those very simple article ones because that's all they do.
yeah.
But for example, we can use a bank or something like that. If they have a product and it's some kind of a loan, there could be a whole bunch of other things under there we could use for personalization, or tracking what their journey might be, that are invisible to them, but they are part of the content model, and they're useful to the people that are using it internally. So there's kind of that the content portion of the model, but then there's a little bit underneath that if you think a lot of this can be used for other things, both internally and externally, around, again, logic, grouping. It really is the root of, in my opinion, the entire project.
So you're touching on 2, I think, really powerful ideas: categories, taxonomy, categorization. And I think one of the coolest things that Experience by Kentico has unlocked for creating meaningful experiences out of this content
Mhm.
model using these levers, categories, taxonomy, grouping, is like are like smart delivery folders. Like
Yeah,
they're
that's I don't want to use the query word again, but that's actually one of that feature flew under the radar, and I couldn't believe that partners weren't more excited about it
yeah,
because this does exactly what business users have wanted. They can create essentially a saved view or a saved query. Sorry again. That says, give me all the articles from 2014 and put them in this smart folder.
yeah.
2014, what year am I using? But
It
that,
was a year.
yeah, it
It
was a
was
year at
a
one
year.
point.
Yeah.
But at that point, then they, as a front end user, could go and select that smart folder. We allow them to, and, they get added new features, or excuse me, they get added new articles. It's going to automatically update. Before this, you would have needed a developer to write that page, you know, put that up there and do a lot of the kind of like legwork for you. I'm not saying that this is, a Kentico specific thing, but it's more, unlocked, like you said, because of how we let you model these things as individual nodes. They're not attached to sites. They're not under something else. They are their own item that can be, manipulated, queried, stored, all that kind of stuff.
And talk to us about what other features are on the horizon to help developers and
Yeah,
business users and marketers alike with the idea of content modeling.
there is internally, we're doing a lot of things, with AI. We are like everybody else, but a little bit more measured. I like to make the joke we're not taking a swan dive into the deep end, but we're using it in ways that if we give it context, especially around other builds of Kentico, that it can do stuff. I actually did an internal experiment with a site, and it had to kind of rip or scrape the whole site, and I
Okay.
create a model. It did not go the way I wanted it to, because it has no context of what's going on. It's just trying to guess and use some of this kind of stuff. But that's what we're working hard on internally to accelerate that, to make you put something in, and especially if it has a group of projects to work off of, either from yourself or other Kentico partners, if it becomes anonymized sort of thing,
Yeah.
it gives it that context to content model. Is it 100% right off the bat? Maybe, maybe not. But I think, one of the other things too, I really like, we have, AI translations. The idea of it is not necessarily to do all the work for you, it's to get most of the work done. So in the translation story, to me, it's instead of writing it from scratch, we're just proofreading it and then saying, yeah, this is good. Coding, similar. Proofreading is not the word I would use, but same kind of idea. I'm not expecting it to nail it 100% necessarily, but does it get 80, 90% of this work done? And then I can take it to the finish line. Again, I'm not, this isn't quite a vibe coding thing, because that again is like
Yeah.
starting from a blank void.
Right.
We're trying to really make this a useful tool for getting projects done quicker and more efficiently.
Yeah. So I read a book about a year ago. It stuck with me. How big things get done, and one of the big premises or philosophies of the book is projects don't go wrong; they start wrong.
Yeah.
And I think what I hear you describing is a reduction in friction
Hmm.
during discovery and definition,
Hmm.
which Kentico is investing time, money, and energy into reducing said friction so that projects don't start wrong.
Right.
They
And
stay on track and they're built on a really solid foundation that we know to be a content model,
yeah, and nothing
which
we're
is
doing is immutable and permanent. Everything we're doing is, trying to move the yards forward. And if it doesn't quite get you to as far as you think, did it save you time in the long run? And
yeah.
again, iteration and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, I mean, we have an AI tool built right into the platform now for business users to do a lot of that kind of stuff too. And it's trained on just our data. So it's not going out to the internet. It's going to our docs. It's going to some internal stuff, and using your project's context
Yeah.
to give you an answer rather than just kind of guess sometimes.
Yeah, there's a lot of like in your shift towards an AI first content management system DXP, there will be a lot of opportunity for leveraging that
Yeah.
context and that tool into uh, better, stronger content model, more meaningful
Yeah.
content models.
And even I think across the project in general. Obviously, content model to me is like that's the root, the blueprint. That is, if I'm selling this to somebody, that is step one. I tell them if I'm sitting with a dev and I have a little crash course, this is your first step, is figuring this out. I can show you how to create these fields, but you're going to have a decently long engagement, like you said, discovery, whatever you want to call it, to come up with this. Because if you nail this part, I tell them, then dominoes are just going to fall after that. You're going to build, your visual components, and they're just going to be able to consume those content models. You might be populating an app or a screen or a kiosk. All that again is going to be unlocked if that core business, core content models are written correctly.
Yeah. That's great. So, I mean, Chris, thanks for the discussion here. I think this is super helpful. It's almost like an unspoken part of everything we do here at the agency. Normally translates into requirements and
It does,
backlogs and
punch lists,
all the maybe the project-based jargon. But this is how we set a really solid foundation for the work and the value that we deliver out to our clients. And of course, we love building on Kentico because you guys are invested in that foundation.
That is our future as well. Yeah.
You're building the features and the tooling to help business users like me.
Yeah.
Right. Because if I'm coding, you're having a bad day,
I kind of joke the same thing. Is I'm a little washed up at this point, but I think it's an important point. Like all those kinds of things that they do set the project off on the right foot. And like I said, it's not as stringent, or we're taking care of a lot of that internally. If models evolve over time and they change and all that kind of stuff, to make it as easy for developers or business users to use this. We can see a future where things are set up mostly by AI, but again, it's not going to be some random person with AI that can implement a Kentico project. It's going to be Kentico experts using AI as a tool in their tool belt to implement it. I think one of the other things too is that the visual representation or the visual portion of the website is so much easier for people to see. And it's much broader. So when people are like, I like this design, all that kind of stuff, you put a Figma of a bunch of data models in front of somebody, 2% of the people looking at it are going to be like, I love this. So it got overlooked for a long time. And then we're like, okay, we like what it looks like. Now we got to figure out how to put this stuff together. So to me, I don't want to say it was a forgotten portion of it, but it was it had lesser importance than usually the visual treatment when people were going through this process. So I've definitely seen countless projects where, something wasn't accounted for, especially in the data portion, and you run up into a wall or you hack something you don't really want to do in that way to accommodate what the visual part looks like, something like that.
Yeah, because there are architectural considerations now, right? If you're going to reuse this content in other places, you have to plan for it. You have to account for it. Yeah. Well, Chris, this has been great. Really appreciate your visit here today. Really appreciate the chat. This was super beneficial. So thanks so much.
No problem. See you soon.
And to all our listeners, we'll catch you on the next one.